Good morning and welcome to 10-Minute English Cafe. It is Sunday, August 9th, 2026, and our first story begins at Prague Zoo, where two polar bears got a large pile of ice during a heat wave.
Happy Sunday! That may be the only summer delivery where rolling on the package is exactly the right response.
After the zoo, we will look at SpaceX's first earnings report after going public, and then a full movie screening accompanied by a live orchestra.
So we start with a plan to stay cool, move to numbers that need careful reading, and finish with musicians matching a film scene by scene.
Those stories lead to today's key word, in sync, spelled I-N-SYNC.
I like that phrase. My phone notifications and my worries are often perfectly in sync, unfortunately.
When things are in sync, they move or work together at the same time or in the same rhythm.
Then my coffee and my attention need to get in sync before the first story starts.
In Prague, the ice did two jobs together. It helped the animals cool down and gave them enrichment.
Useful and interesting at the same time. I would like more Sunday plans with that combination.
In the business story, one strong number appears beside a loss, so the whole report matters.
That is the kind of headline that makes me put down my coffee and ask, strong in which way?
And in the final story, the phrase becomes literal. The orchestra has to stay in sync with the film.
I already know which story will make me want the best seat in the room.
Here at 10-Minute English Cafe, we turn real news into natural English for everyday listening and conversation.
You can listen for the facts, the reactions, and a phrase you can use in your own conversations.
If that sounds helpful, please subscribe and join us for 10 minutes. Let's begin in Prague, where the heat made a very cold delivery useful.
I hope there was plenty of ice for both of those very large customers.
Prague Zoo prepared a large amount of ice on July 30th to cool animals during a European heat wave, and polar bear twins Aleut and Gregor rolled in it in their outdoor enclosure.
That sounds like the world's most luxurious floor, except the floor is melting and the customers have fur.
Forecasts said the temperature could reach 38 degrees Celsius that day. The ice was meant to cool the animals and give them enrichment, or useful stimulation.
I understand the second part. Give me a cold drink and something interesting to do, and my afternoon improves immediately.
The point is not simply to make the enclosure cold. The ice can also give an animal something interesting to explore.
So it is comfort plus a small activity, not just a giant frozen air conditioner.
Right. Aleut and Gregor entered their outdoor enclosure and rolled in the ice cubes.
The rolling makes the purpose easy to see. The ice was not just sitting there like decoration.
Exactly. Their activity shows how the ice could offer stimulation while also helping with the heat.
That's a smart two-for-one plan, a cooler surface and something new to explore.
In sync works here in a simple way. The cooling plan matched the hot weather, and the animal's activity matched the purpose of the ice.
The weather created a clear need, and the ice answered it in more than one way. That's better coordination than most group projects.
Prague Zoo has also described ice as enrichment for animals, so cooling and interest can happen together.
I like that idea for people, too. A cool place is good, but a cool place with something interesting to do is even better.
And the plan itself was simple. Bring in a large amount of ice when the forecast was 38 degrees, then let the bears interact with it.
Simple, but memorable. If someone told me their office heat plan was find the ice pile, I would have several questions.
For the bears, though, the phrase cool off fits perfectly because the ice helped them get less hot. I can cool off after a walk, but I cannot promise to roll around in a public ice pile. That's probably a wise choice. The zoo story shows how one change in an environment can support both comfort and activity.
And sometimes the most practical plan looks like a giant pile of ice waiting for a bear to approve it.
SpaceX announced its first quarterly result as a publicly traded company on August 4th, reporting about $7.8 billion in revenue.
That is a very large first report. I need a tiny coffee-sized explanation before the numbers start doing laps around my brain.
The revenue was up by about 92% from the year before, and it was above an analyst's consensus of roughly $6.9 billion.
So the sales number beat expectations, but that does not automatically mean every part of the report was cheerful.
Exactly. The same report showed a loss of $541 million. One result can contain a strong revenue figure and a loss at the same time.
That's like getting a high score on one exam and still discovering that your backpack is full of unfinished homework.
Your exam example is close to the idea. If a result comes in better than the forecast, we can say it beat expectations. That describes one measure, not the entire report.
Good. If my lunch arrives early, it beats my delivery time expectation, even if I still forgot to order a spoon.
Right. We should also avoid turning one revenue number into a prediction about the future.
Numbers are so good at looking confident. A chart can look certain, even when it only tells us what has already happened.
A careful listener asks what the number measures, what comparison is being used, and what the report leaves out.
I would ask whether the number is revenue, a loss, or a forecast before I decide what the headline means.
In this case, the revenue figure was above the forecast, while the same report also showed a $541 million loss. Keeping those labels beside the numbers stops my brain from mixing them into one giant total. The report is also news because it gives the public its first look at a quarterly result after the company became publicly traded. The first report feels like opening a new notebook. Everyone wants to see whether the neat cover matches the pages. The picture is mixed but clear. Revenue grew strongly and beat the forecast, while the company also reported a loss. So, in sync doesn't mean every number moves in the same direction. It can mean we line up the pieces before making an opinion. That's a useful way to listen to business news. Let the comparison and the measure stay visible. And keep a spoon nearby in case the numbers turn into soup again. Love Actually will be shown in full with a live orchestra in December 2026 across 5 cities in Australia and New Zealand, bringing a familiar film and live music into the same event.
Watching a familiar movie while the music happens in the room sounds like the film just invited its soundtrack to dinner.
The movie will be projected on a screen while the orchestra performs the soundtrack in sync with the action.
That timing must be serious. If the music arrived late, a romantic scene could suddenly feel awkward.
Exactly. The format depends on the film and the orchestra moving together, so the audience experiences cinema and a concert at once.
I like events that give me 2 reasons to sit still, one for the story and one for the musicians.
The concert is planned for 5 cities across Australia and New Zealand, so the same film and orchestra format will travel through both countries.
5 cities is enough for a small travel map, but not enough for me to pretend I can visit them all in one weekend.
The concert features music by Craig Armstrong, performed by a live orchestra, while the full film plays.
A live score can make a familiar scene feel new because your ears are receiving the emotion in real time.
That is the appeal of the format. The audience shares one room while the full film plays and the orchestra performs the music live.
Shared rooms change how I watch. At home, I pause for snacks. In a concert hall, the orchestra politely keeps the story moving.
In sync is especially useful here. It can describe the exact coordination between the projected film and the live performance.
It can also describe 2 friends choosing the same dramatic moment to whisper, "This song is doing a lot."
The focus is the live format. The full film stays on the screen while Craig Armstrong's music is performed in the room.
That makes the familiar soundtrack feel less like background music and more like part of the event happening in front of you.
This event turns a familiar film into a new kind of shared experience without changing the basic story on the screen.
That is the nice surprise. Sometimes a new setting changes how you notice something you thought you already knew.
And that brings our three stories together. The right timing can make ice useful, numbers meaningful, and music feel present.
A bear, a balance sheet, and a movie all found their rhythm. My coffee is finally trying to do the same.
Today we saw Prague Zoo use ice for cooling and enrichment, SpaceX report revenue above expectations and a loss, and a live orchestra meet a full film.
3 very different stories, but each one asked us to notice how separate pieces work together.
Our keyword, in sync, means moving or working together at the same time or in the same rhythm.
Take it with you when your schedule, your music, or your lunch order finally lines up.
Which story would you like to experience most closely and why? The ice at the zoo, the company report, or the film with live music?
I choose the orchestra because I want to see whether my emotional reaction and the soundtrack can stay in sync.
I choose the ice story because a practical solution can also be playful.
Tell us your choice and your reason in the comments. Any language is welcome, and even one emoji is completely fine.
If you enjoyed this calm English chat, please like and subscribe so you can meet us here again.
Take in sync with you when separate parts need good timing and cooperation to work well.
Notice one thing today that works better when its parts move together.
Maybe it's your playlist matching your walk or your calendar matching your energy. See you next time.